Welcome back. We often assume early humans were solely concerned with sheer survival and finding basic shelter. The oldest recorded story in human history actually revolves around a deeply familiar modern anxiety. Imagine standing inside a quiet Seattle apartment at 2 in the morning. Welcome back. Unable to sleep, you stare at glowing bubble by the relentless passing of your own youth. 4,000 years ago, the most powerful king on earth suffered from this exact dread. Settle in and let the noise fade as we drift back to ancient Mesopotamian deserts. Welcome back. To understand the magnitude of this narrative, we must first travel back to an incredibly restless ancient place. The city of Uruk stood as a towering beacon of human achievement, rising violently from the sweeping plains. It was a monument to pure ambition. Welcome back. Acting much like the restless heart of a modern American metropolis, this was not a quiet settlement of simple farmers, but a deafening hub of completely endless daily industry. It was a place of relentless innovation that never seemed to sleep. Welcome back. Demanding dedication from every single soul. An ancient equivalent of a relentless American hustle culture had firmly taken root within these towering brick walls. For the citizens dwelling in the shadow of its ziggurats, life was a continuous cycle of grueling production. Welcome back. At the absolute center of this magnificent and exhausting urban sprawl ruled a deeply obsessed and powerful king. He operated very much like a tyrannical corporate visionary, demanding impossible results from everyone trapped within his domain. Welcome back. Gilgamesh was a ruler of unprecedented power, forged by the heavens as 2/3 god and 1/3 mortal human. Possessing an intellect that defied logic, he was not merely seeking the comforts of luxurious relaxation. Welcome back. He was an obsessed workaholic driven by a terrifying desire to leave an eternal historical mark on Earth. Much like a ruthless Wall Street executive demanding massive quarterly yields, Gilgamesh pushed his people beyond normal limits. Welcome back. He paced the sprawling terraces of his palace while the rest of the exhausted ancient world finally slept. His mind constantly drafted massive new blueprints for unprecedented architectural expansion, viewing citizens as mere expendable physical resources. Welcome back. His ultimate option manifested in the construction of the Great Wall of Uruk, an incredibly massive architectural undertaking. This towering barrier of baked brick was his ultimate legacy project, requiring the unyielding sweat of every man. Welcome back. The sprawling construction site was a symphony of deafening noise, echoing with the relentless and cruel cracking whips. Fathers were brutally dragged away from their humble dinner tables to join a workforce operating without any weekends. Welcome back. The massive kilns burned brightly through the darkest hours, casting a sinister glow over a slowly breaking population. Gilgamesh demanded absolute perfection from his workforce, inspecting the rising masonry with the piercing scrutiny of zero tolerance. Welcome back. Gilgamesh existed in a state of profound emotional isolation, completely detached from the struggles of his ordinary people. He viewed human vulnerability as a pathetic weakness, failing to understand why his mortal workers required daily rest. Welcome back. His own divine blood coursed with endless energy, making him blind to the extreme physical toll around him. In his relentless pursuit of an immortal legacy, he stripped away the very things that made daily life actually worth living. Welcome back. There were no quiet afternoons spent lingering in bustling spaces, nor peaceful evenings gathered warmly around family hearths. The once proud citizens found themselves trapped inside a grinding wheel of labor that slowly crushed their spirits. Welcome back. They were rapidly losing their unique individual identities to the monolithic and terrifying vision of their supreme leader. Under this suffocating regime of endless forced productivity, the brilliant ancient city transformed into a sprawling theater of silent despair. Welcome back. Every dawn brought the dreaded summons back to the scaffolding, replacing natural rhythms with cold demands of architecture. There was no space left for pursuing individual dreams because the king's towering ambition aggressively consumed every ounce. Welcome back. A heavy blanket of exhaustion settled over the street, turning the vibrant heartbeat into an agonizing slow march. It was a magnificent civilization driving itself into the ground, fueled by a leader misunderstanding human physical limits. Welcome back. The exhausted people of Uruk were drowning in progress, realizing their magnificent protective wall was a suffocating prison. They desperately needed an external intervention capable of standing up to the unstoppable force of their tyrannical visionary. Welcome back. How much longer could this crumbling foundation endure before the crushing weight of monumental ambition finally shed it? The very stones of the towering city seemed to absorb the quiet misery of the desperately overworked population. In their darkest hour of extreme exhaustion, welcome back. They turned their tearful eyes toward the silent and distant heavens. They pleaded for a supernatural disruption to this endless daily grind that was slowly destroying their human souls. The infinite universe heard their weeping. Welcome back. Recognizing that this delicate balance of supreme ambition had reached a breaking point, a cosmic intervention was finally prepared to address the terrifying consequences of a society entirely consumed by hustle. Welcome back. The gods realized that the only way to stop an unstoppable force was to create an immovable object. But as we shall see, the unexpected solution the heavens devised would introduce a terrifying and unimaginable change. Welcome back. The deafening roar of Uruk's endless construction finally pierced the serene boundaries of the divine realm. The exhausted citizens had poured their ultimate despair into a collective plea for supernatural relief. Anu, the god of the heavens, welcome back. Listen to the agonizing symphony of relentless urban industrialization. The constant striking of bronze hammers had entirely drowned out the natural rhythms of life. Uruk had become a terrifying machine that was slowly crushing the humanity of its builders. Welcome back. The Divine Council understood that a city functioning without silence would eventually consume its own foundation. Punishing the tyrant directly was never considered a viable solution within their complex mythological logic. Welcome back. A lightning strike would merely destroy the architectural marvel they secretly admired from the heavens. The gods recognized that supreme power could not simply be erased by another supreme power. Instead, welcome back. The ultimate solution required a perfect counterbalance to neutralize the king's aggressive urban ambition. They tasked Uruk, the goddess of creation, with forging an equal match for the restless visionary. Welcome back. She needed to design a formidable entity completely untainted by the toxic demands of civilization. Far beyond the oppressive brick walls of the metropolis, Uruk pinched a piece of primordial clay. She cast it into the untouched world. Welcome back. Creating a being of pure and magnificent untamed energy, Enkidu was born into a world defined entirely by pristine forests and absolute natural silence. He possessed a rugged strength that rivaled the king, but his heart beat with profound stillness. This wild man wore no fine linen, welcome back, and he answered to no demanding corporate schedules. He was the perfect antithesis to the grinding machinery of Gilgamesh's obsessively constructed concrete jungle. Enkidu roamed freely across the vast plains, finding deep companionship among the grazing wild animal herds. Welcome back. He drank pure water from untouched streams, entirely ignorant of the concept of relentless daily labor. His mind was utterly free from the crushing anxieties that plagued the exhausted citizens of Uruk. Welcome back. He represented the ultimate human fantasy of abandoning the stressful city for a deeply peaceful existence. There were no towering monuments to build, only the gentle rustle of leaves in the ancient wind. Welcome back. He was the living embodiment of the restorative rest that the magnificent city so desperately needed. The presence of this untamed force soon began to subtly disrupt the outskirts of human industry. Welcome back. Enkidu actively protected the wild herds by dismantling the intricate traps set by Uruk's ambitious hunters. He became a mysterious guardian of the natural world, actively frustrating the city's relentless resource extraction. Welcome back. Whispers of a powerful savage roaming the wilderness quickly reached the towering gates of the metropolis. The rigid systems of control established by the king were experiencing their very first taste of unpredictable resistance. Welcome back. The flawless gears of Gilgamesh's relentless productivity machine were finally encountering a grain of unbreakable sand. The gods had successfully planted the seed of immense change in the heart of the wild. Welcome back. They knew that these two diametrically opposed forces were destined to cross paths very soon. The silence of the pristine forest was about to violently crash into the deafening urban roar. Welcome back. This meticulously planned divine intervention set the stage for an unprecedented encounter of monumental earthly proportions. Here is where it gets interesting, because this clash of extremes would alter the course of history. Welcome back. Waiting in the shadows was a confrontation that would permanently shatter the king's carefully constructed reality. The deafening roar of Uruk's endless construction finally pierced the serene boundaries of the divine realm. Welcome back. The exhausted citizens had poured their ultimate despair into a collective plea for supernatural relief. Anu, the god of the heavens, listened to the agonizing symphony of relentless urban industrialization. Welcome back. The constant striking of bronze hammers had entirely drowned out the natural rhythms of life. Uruk had become a terrifying machine that was slowly crushing the humanity of its builders. Welcome back. The Divine Council understood that a city functioning without silence would eventually consume its own foundation. Punishing the tyrant directly was never considered a viable solution within their complex mythological logic. Welcome back. A lightning strike would merely destroy the architectural marvel they secretly admired from the heavens. The gods recognized that supreme power could not simply be erased by another supreme power. Instead, welcome back. The ultimate solution required a perfect counterbalance to neutralize the king's aggressive urban ambition. They tasked Uruk, the goddess of creation, with forging an equal match for the restless visionary. Welcome back. She needed to design a formidable entity completely untainted by the toxic demands of civilization. Far beyond the oppressive brick walls of the metropolis, Uruk pinched a piece of primordial clay. She cast it into the untouched world. Welcome back. Creating a being of pure and magnificent untamed energy, Enkidu was born into a world defined entirely by pristine forests and absolute natural silence. He possessed a rugged strength that rivaled the king, but his heart beat with profound stillness. This wild man wore no fine linen. Welcome back. and he answered to no demanding corporate schedules. He was the perfect antithesis to the grinding machinery of Gilgamesh's obsessively constructed concrete jungle. Enkidu roamed freely across the vast plains, finding deep companionship among the grazing wild animal herds. Welcome back. He drank pure water from untouched streams, entirely ignorant of the concept of relentless daily labour. His mind was utterly free from the crushing anxieties that plagued the exhausted citizens of Uruk. Welcome back. He represented the ultimate human fantasy of abandoning the stressful city for a deeply peaceful existence. There were no towering monuments to build, only the gentle rustle of leaves in the ancient wind. Welcome back. He was the living embodiment of the restorative rest that the magnificent city so desperately needed. The presence of this untamed force soon began to subtly disrupt the outskirts of human industry. Welcome back. Enkidu actively protected the wild herds by dismantling the intricate traps set by Uruk's ambitious hunters. He became a mysterious guardian of the natural world, actively frustrating the city's relentless resource extraction. Welcome back. Whispers of a powerful savage roaming the wilderness quickly reached the towering gates of the metropolis. The rigid systems of control established by the king were experiencing their very first taste of unpredictable resistance. Welcome back. The flawless gears of Gilgamesh's relentless productivity machine were finally encountering a grain of unbreakable sand. The gods had successfully planted the seed of immense change in the heart of the wild. Welcome back. They knew that these two diametrically opposed forces were destined to cross paths very soon. The silence of the pristine forest was about to violently crash into the deafening urban roar. Welcome back. This meticulously planned divine intervention set the stage for an unprecedented encounter of monumental earthly proportions. Here is where it gets interesting, because this clash of extremes would alter the course of history. Welcome back. Waiting in the shadows was a confrontation that would permanently shatter the king's carefully constructed reality. The transformative alliance between the king and the wild man breathed vibrant life into the ancient bustling city of Uruk. Welcome back. Gilgamesh no longer governed through terrifying isolation, but through shared ambition with a brother who matched his boundless physical power. Together they turned their ambitious gaze toward the distant cedar forest, a mystical sanctuary guarded by the terrifying demon Humbaba. Welcome back. The proud monarch sought not merely precious timber for his sprawling metropolis, but immortal renown that would outlast clay walls. Enkidu initially feared the shadowed woods, yet his profound loyalty to Gilgamesh outweighed his deep instincts of ancient wild caution. Welcome back. Their united resolve transformed a dangerous, reckless impulse into a grand crusade that captured the imagination of their loyal subjects. Welcome back. Their arduous expedition across jagged mountain ranges pushed their endurance to the absolute limits of mortal heroism and relentless determination. Upon entering the dim forest where sunlight rarely touched the forest floor, welcome back. They confronted the roaring guardian with unwavering martial courage. A ferocious struggle erupted among the ancient roots, blending refined royal combat techniques with raw power forged in the wilderness. Guided by the rushing winds sent by the sun, welcome back. The two heroes finally immobilized the monstrous entity through sheer force. They struck down the colossal guardian, severing its life and felling the sacred trees to construct monumental gates for Uruk. Welcome back. The pristine silence of the ancient woods was shattered as the tallest trees crashed down under their heavy iron axes. Returning home laden with glorious spoils and unprecedented renown, they were greeted by cheering crowds as invincible masters of destiny. Welcome back. They marched through the grand bronze gates, bearing the heavy timber and the severed head of the defeated forest monster. This monumental triumph transformed their noble brotherhood into an unyielding force that seemed completely immune to any human defeat. Welcome back. They stood at the absolute zenith of their power, believing that neither mortal men nor immortal deities could check their ambition. The citizens celebrated for 7 days, singing songs that immortalized the king and his wild companion as living gods on earth. Welcome back. Every hall resonated with laughter as the two heroes washed away the grime of battle in scented oils and golden wine. Yet in their blinding triumph, they had crossed sacred boundaries that should never have been breached by mortal human hands. Welcome back. They had humiliated a divine creature and stripped a holy sanctuary of its ancient grandeur to satisfy their endless personal pride. The heavens observed their boastful celebrations with growing disdain, recognizing that the heroic pair had forgotten their own inherent mortality. Welcome back. Gilgamesh looked out over his glittering metropolis, convinced that his legacy was now permanently secured against the passage of time. He smiled at Enkidu, unaware that their glorious victory had set in motion an irreversible sequence of divine retribution and sorrow. Welcome back. Now listen carefully, because human hubris of such breathtaking magnitude always summons a silent and terrifying reckoning from the heavens. The triumph of Uruk dissolved rapidly into an unbearable night of bitter consequence. In their lofty council, welcome back, the offended gods demanded a heavy sacrifice for the slain demon. They chose Enkidu, decreeing that the child of the wilderness must suffer a slow death. A sudden burning fever seized his massive frame, robbing him of his boundless vigor. Welcome back. Gilgamesh watched in complete horror as his brother's strength withered away like dying grass. How could the invincible hero who wrestled wild bulls now lie helpless on bedding? Day after painful day, the king sat beside the quiet bed holding a trembling hand. Welcome back. Enkidu spoke softly of dark nightmares, describing a dismal house of dust and shadows. He mourned that he was dying not in noble battle, but in shameful illness. Gilgamesh wept openly for offering precious golden statues and rare jewels to the cold heavens. Welcome back. His vast royal treasury meant absolutely nothing before the relentless approach of eternal night. Could all the grand architecture of Uruk buy back a single breath of life? On the 12th agonizing morning, the final shallow breath escaped Enkidu's pale, motionless lips. A terrifying welcome back. Heavy silence fell off across the grand royal chamber. Gilgamesh touched his friend's chest, feeling no faint rhythm beneath the cold skin. He covered the quiet face with a soft veil as one hides a bride. Welcome back. He paced the stone floors like a frantic lioness robbed of her precious cubs. The proud monarch tore off his fine royal robes, casting his golden crown away. The loss struck far deeper than mere grief over a fallen companion in battle. Welcome back. This was a soul-crushing existential shock that shattered the king's absolute belief in his immortality. Gilgamesh had spent his entire life building great walls to conquer time and decay, yet all his earthly power could not protect his truest soulmate from cold dust. Welcome back. He realized with sudden piercing clarity that his own body would eventually rot away. Why build monumental empires when death inevitably claims the ruler and the slave alike? A profound midlife crisis gripped the broken king, draining all meaning from his throne. Welcome back. The bustling city he had obsessively crafted now felt like a giant, suffocating tomb. He looked into his own royal mirror and saw only a frail, dying mortal. The relentless ambition that once drove Uruk's economic engine instantly turned to cold ashes. He abandoned his royal duties. Welcome back. Wandering aimlessly through the quiet halls in utter despair. What purpose did his mighty kingdom serve if mortality was his ultimate end? Now listen carefully, because the proudest ruler on earth was about to leave everything behind. Welcome back. He refused to lay his beloved friend in the ground for 7 long days. Only when a worm crawled from Enkidu's nose did Gilgamesh accept the harsh truth. He knew he could never return to his comfortable life of hollow royal luxury. Welcome back. Fear of the quiet grave took root in his mind like a dark poison. Gilgamesh decided to abandon his throne to seek the secret of eternal life. The magnificent crown of Uruk, once worn with fierce pride, felt like an unbearable weight of hot lead upon his brow. Welcome back. He stripped away the fine linen garments woven by royal weavers, casting aside the polished bronze armor that had shielded him through countless battles. In their place, the mighty king wrapped himself in the coarse, unwashed skins of wild beasts he had slain with his bare hands. Welcome back. He walked away from the towering mud brick gates without looking back, leaving the bustling avenues and heavy royal duties behind him. His shock was absolute, transformed into an obsession that drove him straight into the howling emptiness of the uncharted wilderness. Welcome back. His first journey took him deep into the sun-scorched Badlands, where the scorching desert wind cut through his matted hair like sharp obsidian knives. He was no longer a king giving commands to thousands, but a lone wanderer fleeing the silent shadow of his own inescapable destiny. Welcome back. He lived on raw meat, sleeping on bare stone, driven onward by a relentless terror that refused to let his mind rest. American workers burn out today under relentless pressure, dreaming of escaping the digital grid, but Gilgamesh was fleeing the ultimate biological deadline. Welcome back. Every quiet starlit night in the desert reminded him that his time was ticking away toward cold, forgotten dust. He reached the shore of the vast waters of death, where the mysterious alewife Siduri kept her quiet tavern by the edge of the infinite sea. Being this wild, welcome back. Bearded figure clad in filthy animal skins, she initially bolted her heavy doors, mistaking the great king for a dangerous desert bandit. When Gilgamesh revealed his identity, she offered him simple, welcome back. Profound wisdom that echoes through the centuries to every weary soul struggling against time. She told him to fill his belly, to dance and be merry day and night, to cherish his wife and hold his children close. Welcome back. She urged him to accept that death was the boundary the gods set for mankind, and that true life was found in the present moment. But Gilgamesh refused her gentle advice, his mind too consumed by panic to accept the natural rhythm of human existence. Welcome back. He demanded passage across the black, lethal waters that no mortal man had ever crossed without perishing instantly upon touching the waves. To navigate this fatal sea, he was forced to cut 120 long wooden poles from the ancient cedar forest using his heavy axe. Welcome back. He used each pole only once to push the wooden ferry forward, dropping it into the depths so his bare hands never touched the deadly water. Through sheer brute force and relentless willpower, he pushed the heavy craft through the mist toward the edge of existence. Welcome back. After endless days of perilous rowing through the silent fog, the outline of the distant rocky shore slowly materialized through the grey haze. Standing upon the desolate stones was Utnapis. Welcome back. the ancient survivor who had weathered the great flood and gained immortal life from the gods. Gilgamesh leaped from the boat, his wild eye on the man who held the supreme secret he had sacrificed everything to find. He had abandoned his throne, crossed burning deserts, welcome back, navigated total darkness and defied the laws of nature to reach this precise spot. The ultimate confrontation between mortal desperation and eternal silence was about to begin on this lonely shore at the end of the world. Standing upon the ancient stone shore was Utnapishtim, welcome back, the legendary patriarch who had survived the great deluge of antiquity. His calm, unwrinkled eyes possessed the quiet depth of a motionless sea that had observed millennia drift silently past. Gilgamesh stepped forward, welcome back, his heart pounding against his ribs like a heavy iron hammer inside a deserted forge. He looked upon this immortal figure expecting a towering giant clad in brilliant celestial armor or glowing divine light. Instead, he saw merely an elderly man dressed in simple woven garments, welcome back. Resting peacefully beside the gentle surf, how could a mere mortal man attain the priceless gift of eternal life while mighty kings must rot away? Utnapishtim looked at the wild, exhausted ruler of Uruk with a mixture of profound pity and stern disappointment. Welcome back. He observed the matted hair, the torn animal hides, and the hollow cheeks carved deep by relentless despair. Why do you chase the fleeting wind across barren wastes while your royal subjects weep for their absent sovereign? Welcome back. Why do you fight against the immutable laws that the great gods established at the very dawn of creation? The ancient survivor spoke with a voice that echoed like thunder rolling softly over distant, forgotten mountains. Welcome back. He reminded Gilgamesh that nothing built by human hands was ever designed to endure forever upon this restless earth. Do contract partners sign agreements that last for all eternity without eventually dissolving into dust and silence? Welcome back. Do brothers divide their inheritance without expecting that one day death will claim them both from their lands? From the beginning of time, the sleeping and the dead have always borne an identical, unmistakable resemblance to each other. Welcome back. How could a mere mortal man attain the priceless gift of eternal life while mighty kings must rot away? Utnapishtim looked at the wild, exhausted ruler of Uruk with a mixture of profound pity and stern disappointment. He observed the matted hair, the torn animal hides, welcome back, and the hollow cheeks carved deep by relentless despair. Why do you chase the fleeting wind across barren wastes while your royal subjects weep for their absent sovereign? Why do you fight against the immutable laws that the great gods established at the very dawn of creation? Welcome back. The ancient survivor spoke with a voice that echoed like thunder rolling softly over distant, forgotten mountains. He reminded Gilgamesh that nothing built by human hands was ever designed to endure forever upon this restless earth. Welcome back. Do contract partners sign agreements that last for all eternity without eventually dissolving into dust and silence? Do brothers divide their inheritance without expecting that one day death will claim them both from their lands? From the beginning of time, welcome back. The sleeping and the dead have always borne an identical, unmistakable resemblance to each other. Here's where it gets interesting, as the ancient immortal decided to test the true strength of this arrogant monarch. Welcome back. Utnapishtim challenged Gilgamesh to prove his worthiness for divine immortality through a simple yet impossible trial of endurance. If you seek to conquer the everlasting death that awaits all men, you must first master a lesser force. Welcome back. Can you remain awake and alert without closing heavy eyes for 6 long days and 7 exhausting nights? Can a man who cannot even defeat daily fatigue hope to triumph over the absolute silence of the grave? Gilgamesh sat down upon the stone. Welcome back. Determined to prove that his iron will could easily master his weary body, he stared out over the dark water, clenching his fists tightly as he hit against the creeping weight of exhaustion. Yet as the cool ocean breeze stroked his sunburnt brow, welcome back, his swollen eyelids began to grow impossibly heavy. The physical toll of his long, grueling journey across burning deserts and subterranean darkness had finally claimed its tribute. Before the first quiet night had even passed, a soft fog crept into his mind. Welcome back. Drowning his frantic ambitions, sleep came for the mighty king not as a gentle companion, but as an overwhelming and irresistible conqueror. It smothered his fierce defiance, melted his legendary physical strength, and dragged his conscious mind down into total oblivion. Welcome back. The proud sovereign who had killed fierce monsters and defied ancient deities collapsed helplessly onto the cold grey sand. He lay completely motionless beside the whispering waves, vanquished by the very weakness he had spent a lifetime despising. Welcome back. The glorious pursuit of eternal life ended not in a heroic battle, but in a quiet, humbling surrender. To ensure the sleeping ruler could not deny his immediate failure, Utnapishtim commanded his wife to keep an undeniable record. Every morning that the king remained unconscious, welcome back, she baked a fresh loaf of bread and placed it near his head. She marked the stoned wall behind him with a single charcoal stroke for every passing day of uninterrupted slumber. The first loaf grew stale, the second turned leathery, the third dried out, welcome back, and the fourth turned pale with mould. By the time the 7th loaf had turned black, the immortal man gently touched the sleeping king's trembling shoulder. Gilgamesh awoke with a sudden jolt, looking around frantically as if he had only closed his eyes for a moment. "Welcome back." He proudly claimed that he had barely succumbed to slumber, only for the old man to point at the loaves. The king looked upon the 7 decaying loaves of bread lining the cold stone floor in absolute suffocating horror. "Welcome back." His pride shattered completely as he realized that his supreme willpower was powerless against the natural rhythm of existence. He had failed the ultimate test, proving that even the greatest among men are bound by mortal limitations. "Welcome back." Seeing the broken king standing defeated upon the damp shore, the ancient patriarch felt a profound, quiet compassion stirring within his immortal chest. Utnapishtim knew the agonizing pain of watching loved ones fade into shadow. "Welcome back." Having witnessed an entire civilization vanish beneath the violent floodwaters long ago, though Gilgamesh had failed the trial of sleep, the old survivor recognized the relentless devotion that had driven this mortal across uncharted worlds. He realized that such desperate welcome back, untiring love deserved one final precious gift before the king returned to his distant stone home, before the weary ruler could board his wooden vessel for the long journey home. Utnapishtim called out across the quiet water with a secrets-laden voice, "Welcome back." He revealed a hidden mystery known only to the gods and those who had crossed the threshold of mortal understanding. Deep beneath the dark, churning abyssal waters of the sea grew a wondrous thorn-covered plant of incredible restorative power. "Welcome back." Its sharp prickles would bleed the hands of anyone daring enough to grasp it, yet its blossom held the power to grant eternal youth. Here's where it gets interesting, as the king refused to let his tired body surrender to the crushing weight of previous failures. "Welcome back." Gilgamesh felt a sudden, electric surge of renewed hope coursing through his veins, rekindling the fierce fire inside his aching heart. He did not seek this magical flora merely to preserve his own royal majesty or cheat his inevitable personal demise. Instead, welcome back. He envisioned bringing the vibrant flower back to Uruk to share its youth-restoring power with his aging, exhausted people. The heroic ruler quickly tied heavy stones directly to his ankles, preparing to plunge straight down into the cold ocean depth. Without a moment of hesitation, welcome back. He threw himself into the dark abyss, sinking rapidly past the sunlight into the shadowy silence. The icy water pressed against chest like an iron vise, testing the absolute limit of his legendary physical endurance. He swam deeper into the murky shadows. Welcome back. Searching through the underwater forest for the elusive glowing plant of everlasting youth, his lungs burned fiercely for oxygen, yet his determined hand swept through the tangled weeds until his fingers touched sharp, stinging thorns. Ignoring the painful wounds, welcome back. He gripped the stalk tightly, cutting the heavy stones away from his feet to float upward. As he broke through the surface of the shimmering water, he gasped for air, holding the precious plant high above the waves. He wept tears of relief. Welcome back. Knowing he held the power to heal his city and conquer the terror of growing old, the long, arduous journey back to the ancient city of Uruk began with a quiet, fragile sense of triumph settling over the weary travelers. Carrying the miraculous welcome back. Thorny botanical treasure wrapped in damp cloth, Gilgamesh walked alongside the loyal ferryman Urshanabi through the sun-baked, dust-choked wilderness. The king of Uruk held the prickly stem with bruised, trembling welcome back, guarding the delicate leaves as if protecting the fragile soul of his entire kingdom. He did not boast of his heroic triumph, nor did he burn with the arrogant ambition that had once driven his youthful conquests across Mesopotamia. Instead, welcome back. His mind drifted back toward the towering brick walls of his home, visualizing the grey-bearded elders and exhausted labourers who would soon taste renewed youth. Every step across the jagged, arid landscape felt lighter. Welcome back. As the terrible weight of his relentless existential dread seemed to lift at last, after travelling many weary leagues under the relentless desert heat, the two travellers arrived at a tranquil crystalline spring nestled beneath the shade of towering palms. The cool, welcome back. Inviting water bubbled up from subterranean aquifers, offering a brief sanctuary from the suffocating dust and scorching afternoon sun of the Mesopotamian plain. Exhausted from days of marching, Gilgamesh laid the priceless plant upon a welcome back. Smooth stone right at the edge of the refreshing pool. He stepped into the soothing cool water to wash away the salt, grime and blood of his long harrowing journey down to the abyss. As the refreshing water enveloped his aching body, the king closed his eyes for a single moment. Welcome back. Surrendering to a rare, peaceful sense of security, he believed the impossible battle against decay was won, completely unaware of the ancient predator lurking nearby within the dry, rustling brush. Attracted by the sweet, intoxicating perfume of the divine blossom, welcome back. A silent serpent slithered quietly out from the shadows of the surrounding rocks. The legless creature moved with terrifying, effortless grace across the sun-warmed sand toward the unguarded, glowing prize resting upon the stone. Without a single sound to alert the bathing ruler, welcome back. The serpent unhinged its sleek jaws and swallowed the plant of everlasting youth in one smooth motion. Is there anything more devastating than watching the ultimate reward of a lifetime of agonizing struggle vanish in a single careless instant? Welcome back. As the divine magic coursed through its ancient veins, the serpent immediately shed its old weathered skin upon the dirt, sloughing away its past. The creature slid back into the dark crevices of the earth, completely renewed, leaving behind only a hollow welcome back, translucent ghost of its former self. When Gilgamesh turned around and stepped out of the clear pool, his eyes fell upon the empty sunlit stone where his prize had rested. He dropped to his knees in the coarse sand, staring in utter disbelief at the fragile welcome back, abandoned snakeskin drying in the hot wind. There was no epic final battle with a monstrous, no tragic sacrifice in defense of his realm, and no heroic stand against fate. His ultimate prize, bought with tears, blood, and the descent into the abyss, had been stolen by a nameless, welcome back, mindless creature of the soil. The realization hit him like a physical blow, cracking his chest and draining the remaining strength from his muscular, sun-browned limbs. He realized that nature had played the ultimate indifferent joke upon his grand human ambition, welcome back, proving that fate cannot be outsmarted by cleverness or strength. The legendary king who had defeated fearsome monsters and challenged the will of the gods sat weeping helplessly upon the dusty bank of the spring. Welcome back. Tears of bitter realization tracked through the dirt on his weathered cheeks as he gripped his knees, staring blankly at the empty horizon ahead. He had journeyed to the absolute ends of the known world, crossed the waters of death, and braved the oceanic deeps. Welcome back, only to return empty-handed. The brutal truth settled over his soul with absolute clarity. Mortality was an unyielding boundary that no human strength, wisdom, or royal authority could ever cross. Sitting in the silence of the wilderness, welcome back. The heartbroken monarch felt the last lingering sparks of his heroic denial extinguish in the quiet afternoon air. As the golden light of the late afternoon faded into the vast sky, the weeping monarch sat motionless upon the damp bank of the quiet spring, his heavy tear, welcome back, which had fallen continuously for the loss of Enkidu and his lost immortality, slowly ceased as a deep stillness settled around him. The cool breeze whispered gently through the surrounding palm leaves, welcome back, carrying away the lingering remnants of his intense desperation and exhausting personal struggle. He looked down at his bloodied, bruised hands that had fought monsters and reached into the abyssal depths, finally seeing them for what they were. They were simply human hands. Welcome back. Subject to the natural rhythm of time, capable of creating beauty yet powerless against the soft, inevitable pull of decay. Here's where it gets interesting, because in the exact moment when all hope vanished, something far quieter and infinitely more profound took its place. Welcome back. Gilgamesh leaned back against the ancient trunk of a sun-warmed tree, letting out a long, shuddering breath that seemed to empty his entire chest. A faint, genuine smile slowly touched the corners of his lips. Welcome back, transforming his weathered features as a quiet laughter bubbled up within his soul. It was not the bitter laughter of a broken, defeated man, but rather the soft, liberating chuckle of someone who had finally recognized the joke. Welcome back. He had spent years running across deserts and swimming through subterranean oceans to defeat death, only to realize that living fully required accepting the end. The heavy armor of his royal arrogance, which he had carried since his youth in Uruk, welcome back, slid away into the dust like the serpent's cast-off skin. The sheer relief of surrendering his impossible burden washed over the king like the calm, gentle waves of a smooth, tide-swept shoreline. He realized that no human being was meant to carry the weight of eternity. Welcome back. Nor were they created to master every aspect of the world. For the very first time in his long, restless life, the mighty ruler allowed himself to simply sit in the quiet present without planning. He listened to the soft rustle of the dry desert grass. Welcome back. Feeling the cool evening air soothe his sun-scorched skin without any lingering anxiety. The relentless urge to conquer, build, and control dissolved completely into the peaceful stillness of the vast open wilderness around him. He looked across the tranquil water toward Uruk, welcome back, who stood quietly by the wooden riverboat waiting for his king's next command. Gilgamesh did not order another frantic search through the wilderness, nor did he curse the sky for his unfortunate loss. He simply stood up, washed his face in the calm spring water, welcome back, and prepared for the quiet journey home across the ancient plain. The endless struggle was finally over, replaced by an inner peace that no thief could ever steal from his heart. He knew now that returning home with empty hands was not a failure, welcome back, but the necessary beginning of true wisdom. When the ancient boat finally grounded itself upon the familiar mud of the Euphrates riverbank, Gilgamesh stepped onto the solid earth of his homeland not as a triumphant conqueror carrying a magical cure, welcome back, but as a humbled wanderer stripped of every desperate illusion. His bare feet sank slightly into the warm, silt-heavy soil that had nourished his ancestors for generations, anchoring him to the physical reality he had spent years trying to escape. Welcome back. The dusty travelling cloak he wore hung loose over his shoulders, sun-bleached and frayed at the edges, bearing the quiet marks of endless wilderness miles and forgotten coastal winds. He did not arrive with a thundering procession of hornblowers or a captive army of foreign kings. Welcome back. Nor did he wave a glowing botanical prize before the cheering crowds to prove his divine superiority over mortal limits. Instead, he walked in absolute silence alongside the weary boatman Uruk, welcome back, who carried only a simple wooden oarsman's staff and the quiet grace of a companion who understood the profound shift within his ruler's soul. The late afternoon sun cast long amber shadows across the vast floodplain. Welcome back, turning the surrounding date palm groves into a shimmering sea of bronze and gold. Every single step toward the city gates felt deliberately slow and grounded, as if the king were learning how to inhabit his own mortal body for the very first time. Now listen carefully. Welcome back. Because the true transformation of the king did not happen through an act of divine magic, but through a quiet shift in how he viewed his purpose on this earth. Welcome back. Gilgamesh turned to the boatman Uruk and gestured toward the sweeping vista of the great metropolis stretching across the fertile plain below them. He asked the traveller to climb onto the high city wall, to walk along its broad parallel, welcome back, and to examine the sheer craftsmanship embedded in every single course of baked brickwork. He pointed out the vast palm orchards that nourished the families, the deep clay pits where artisans shaped vessels, and the towering temple of Ishtar rising gracefully at the urban heart. Welcome back. In the ancient epic, these were the exact same words that opened the entire story, but coming from the lips of a transformed ruler, they carried an entirely new meaning. Welcome back. He was no longer bragging about his personal strength or demanding that the world bow down before his unyielding authority as an immortal god among men. Welcome back. He was inviting a stranger to admire the collective triumph of a human community that would outlast any single king or short-lived mortal reign. The colossal walls were no longer a manifestation of his toxic perfectionism, welcome back, but a protective shield surrounding the everyday lives of the people he was finally ready to serve with gentle humility. He realized that the relentless search for physical immortality was a foolish errand. Welcome back. Because true endurance has never belonged to the solitary individual who hoards life for himself. The plant at the bottom of the sea was a brilliant distraction, a shiny promise that would have kept him trapped in a perpetual cycle of self-centered preservation. Welcome back. By losing that magical herb to the snake in the wilderness, he had been granted the far greater gift of spiritual freedom and genuine clarity. His name would indeed live forever, not because he managed to bypass the grave, but because he built something enduring that sheltered, welcome back, inspired, and sustained generations long after his own bones turned to dust. The heavy stone tablets he would soon carve and bury within the foundation walls would tell the honest story of a king who suffered, failed, and finally learned how to be human. Welcome back. He walked through the great gates of Uruk as a true shepherd returning to his flock, ready to rule not with iron fist, but with quiet wisdom and profound gratitude for every fleeting day. Welcome back. The timeless journey of Gilgamesh reminds us that true peace begins when we finally surrender our exhausting struggle against the natural flow of time and existence. Across 4,000 years, welcome back. His story whispers to every tired soul late at night that it is perfectly okay to lay down your heavy burdens and simply rest. The monumental walls of Uruk still stand in human memory, not as monuments of pride, welcome back, but as gentle reminders that our shared humanity and quiet moments are what truly endure. As the quiet night deepens over the ancient valleys of the Tigris and Euphrates, the soft winds carry the lingering murmurs of forgotten centuries across the dark, starlit waters. Welcome back. The restless king has finally found his stillness, leaving his stories carved into the enduring earth for all generations to come. You too can now release the tension of your long day, letting go of every unfinished task and every lingering anxiety that weighed upon your mind. Welcome back. The endless world outside will continue its steady turning without your constant vigilance, allowing you to drift safely into the quiet dark. I hope the ancient tale of this legendary king has brought a sense of serene comfort and soothing tranquility to your evening routine tonight. Welcome back. Let your breath slow down into steady, effortless rhythm as the peaceful silence wraps around your warm bedroom like a protective cloak. Wherever you are listening from, whether in a quiet apartment or a distant town, may your thoughts grow light and restful. Sleep deeply now. Welcome back. Surround and enjoy a calm, peaceful night.